Hello and welcome to This Day in Europe. Let's round up key developments shaping the continent. From rising political and climate temperatures to history-making swims, here's what's making news across the European Union and beyond. Border tensions are escalating between Poland and Germany. Today, Poland reinstates temporary border checks with Germany and Lithuania. The move is in response to Germany's decision to turn back migrants at its eastern border, a step that Warsaw argues violates EU asylum law. The German Chancellor defends a stricter border policy as necessary to stop illegal entries and reduce pressure on domestic services. But critics argue it undermines the EU's principle of open internal borders enshrined in the Schengen Agreement. The Polish Prime Minister says Germany's actions are unacceptable and claims they push the burden of migration enforcement onto Poland. Donald Tusk also blames Belarus for funneling migrants toward EU borders. Meantime, the European Commission now warns of a deeper crisis in Schengen if member states continue to bypass Brussels and impose unilateral controls. With migration still one of the continent's most divisive issues, tensions like these could have long-term consequences for both EU cohesion and human rights. Tariffs are also taking center stage, with the clock ticking on one of the most consequential trade standoffs in recent European history. By tomorrow, the U.S. is set to raise tariffs on EU exports up to 50% unless a last-minute deal is reached in Washington. The looming measures stem from President Trump's so-called Liberation Day tariffs, which introduced blanket import duties back in April. A temporary freeze capping tariffs at 10% was granted to key allies like the EU, but that grace period is now coming to an end. Germany, deeply dependent on exports, wants a quick deal, similar to what the UK already secured, to shield its industrial base. France and several southern nations, however, warn against what they call a rushed settlement, arguing it could surrender long-term leverage on digital rules, green subsidies, and food safety standards. The Trade Commissioner is trying to thread the needle here, offering a framework agreement to avoid the tariff hike while leaving space to negotiate the details later this year. Economists warn that full tariffs could shave 0.5% off EU GDP and force exporters, especially in sectors like wine, medical devices, and car parts, to rethink their supply chains altogether. Now, some key scenarios could play out. If the framework deal is agreed upon, Trump's tariffs remain at about 10% and the EU avoids the worst-case impact, while detailed negotiations continue. Now, if there is no deal and no extension, tariffs could escalate to as high as 50% on EU exports, likely triggering reciprocal EU measures and more severe market gyrations. Let's look at another scenario as well. A partial or delayed deadline, with letters circulating to warn partners. If no agreement is reached by tomorrow, the EU is prepared to respond with retaliatory tariffs worth 21 billion euros, with more on the table. Bottom line, what's decided or not this week could define the future of transatlantic trade for years to come. Also on the diplomatic agenda, the 37th Franco-British Summit. French President Emmanuel Macron will meet with newly elected British Prime Minister Keir Starmer this week to discuss a range of issues: defense cooperation, trade alignment, and notably, the post-Brexit future of UK-EU relations. With the rise of regional instability and waning American engagement in European affairs, both leaders are expected to recommit to joint security projects, including nuclear deterrence agreements and joint naval exercises. All this as Macron faces political instability at home. His party is reeling from poor European election results, and far-right leader Jordan Bardella continues to gain ground. In the UK, Starmer is also under pressure to show that Labour's return to power includes a strong foreign policy agenda. Turning to climate concerns now, Greece faces yet another wave of devastating wildfires fueled by high winds, soaring temperatures, Emergency crews are deployed across the mainland and the islands of Rhodes and Crete. Thousands are evacuated and several flights are canceled due to smoke and poor visibility. Similar conditions are spreading to parts of Italy and Spain, where droughts and record heat are putting pressure on agriculture and electricity grids. Türkiye is also suffering from wildfires in the eastern province of Izmir. As global temperatures continue to rise, the continent experiences extreme heat for far longer than the traditional summer months. These fires are yet another reminder that climate adaptation plans for the Mediterranean and Germany can no longer wait. As urban areas reclaim rivers for swimming, rural regions battle the rising cost of survival. This comes on the heels of the European Commission and the European Investment Bank announcing over 3.6 billion euros in fresh infrastructure and green energy projects. The funding will support rail upgrades in Italy, port modernization in Greece, and new hydrogen energy corridors in Germany and Austria. These projects are part of the EU's twin transitions, climate neutrality and digital innovation. Alongside this, the Commission unveiled its Quantum Europe 2030 initiative, aiming to make the bloc a world leader in quantum computing. The strategy includes research funding, education programs, and industrial partnerships, especially in France, the Netherlands, and Finland. EU officials say the goal is clear: to future-proof the European economy and reduce reliance on Chinese and American tech giants. Finally, after more than a century, the River Seine in Paris is now open for swimming. The French capital officially opened 3 public swimming zones along the historic waterway near the Eiffel Tower. River bathing was banned in 1923 due to severe pollution and river traffic. But now, a 1.4 billion euro investment, partly tied to last year's Paris Olympic Games, has helped facilitate the return of clean water. The city installed water treatment systems, separated storm drains from sewage, and improved runoff management. Swimming is free and open throughout the summer, a welcome turn as the continent adapts to increasingly hot summers. Well, that's this day in Europe. For AnewZ, I'm Anita Sharma in Arnhem, Netherlands. Back to Baku.